Okay, we're going to make a start. So, as an introduction, my name is Peter Denby. I'm a co-founder and director of a business called Hypergroup. Um, Putting on the session today about implementing Netflix-style personalization in your business. This is an event that's run as part of Leeds Digital Festival. It's a festival that spans over a couple of weeks, this week and next. There's tons and tons of good events, and I'd strongly encourage you to check out some of the events via their websites. It's a really strong program this year of almost 300 events, I think. Okay, so in terms of what we're going to cover today, quick introduction to our business, Hyper. Going to talk a little bit about why bother with personalization in the first place. They're going to move on to, well, a couple of the pioneers of personalization, so Netflix in particular, but I'm also going to touch on Spotify, and then further into the presentation, I've got a couple of other brand examples for you too. I want to talk about some of the hidden gifts of personalization, some of the things that people don't necessarily think about when they think of personalization, and then going to finish off with some thoughts on how you can implement personalization in your own business. So to kick off, just a little bit about Hyper. So we make data science and customer-led decisions accessible to anyone. Some of the concepts I'm going to talk about in this presentation that the likes of Netflix and Spotify use to personalize experiences for customers are, quite challenging techniques, I would say. So our business is all about making them more accessible to more businesses out there. And we do that via looking at data strategy to align with overarching business strategy. We do hands-on data science work as a consultancy. And we also have developed a technology platform that enables data science as a service, particularly for personalization. And we work with a range of large consumer-facing clients. So we help people like Studio Retail, based in the northwest of England, Beaverbrooks, the high street jeweler and online jeweler. We work with Asda in Leeds. And we work with George, who are part of Asda, but in their own right, one of the largest clothing retailers in the UK. And with all those brands, we help them use data to truly understand their customers and then deliver personalized experiences that create more loyal customers and increase profits for those clients that we serve. Okay, so let's jump into the topic in hand then. So why bother with personalization? And a lot of people, when they think of personalization, it's they have a fairly limited view. A lot of people, when they think about personalization, will think about kind of banner ads on the internet. They'll think about maybe personalized emails that have got your name in the email, or when they think about sophisticated personalization, it might be content that's customized to people on a website. But for us, it's actually much broader than that. And we quite like this quote from Seth Godin. If you haven't come across him before, he's a real thought leader in the space of marketing and customer experience. And he said that personalization wasn't supposed to be a cleverly veiled way to chase prospects around the web, showing them the same spammy ad for the same lame stuff as everyone else sees. No, it's a chance to differentiate at a human scale and to use behavior as the most important clue about what people want and, more importantly, what they need. And we would really echo that sentiment. I think personalization is about recognizing as humans our inherent need to be understood as individuals and treated as individuals, and for brands to kind of customize the way that they deal with each individual, talk to them in relevant ways and offer them rich and rewarding experiences. And there's loads of evidence out there that companies that kept personalization right tend to benefit financially. So on the right hand side of this particular slide, Netflix, one of the companies we'll talk about today, this was, I think, as far back as 2017, said the combined cost saving from personalization was $1 billion. That figure will no doubt have increased over the 3 years since. Gartner, who are a leading authority on technology, digital data, they talk about a 15% increase in profits from using personalization engines that recognize customer intent. and Nivea had a 70% conversion rate improvement after implementing personalization. And there's tons of other stats out there on the internet if you search about how brands have benefited, where they've been able to put in place personalization, data-led personalization. And we really advise people to think about it from a customer's point of view. So what are the customer benefits? What's the value that you can deliver to a customer that will then increase loyalty and profits for your business? So things like an easy, fast and frictionless experience, valuable and enjoyable interactions, relevant and inspiring content, helpful and friendly service, and successful and useful consumer outcomes. So personalization is going to be focused on delivering better customer experiences that increase loyalty and in turn increase profits for brands. And there's a lot of evidence out there about brands that implement personalization successfully and those that don't. So this was just one that I picked out. So Thomas Cook, who unfortunately went bust within the last couple of years, although remarkably seemed to have been something of a phoenix from the flames recently and seemed to have come back around, which has slipped under the radar somewhat with all the other kind of bad news happening around the world at the moment. And Retail Week, or an authority on retail, if you're involved in the industry, I'd strongly recommend checking out Retail Week's publications. And they said that Thomas Cook was a victim of the demand for personalization, for recognizing customers as individuals and treating them like that, to be able to kind of build that loyalty. Versus someone like Thread. So if you haven't come across Thread, they're an online kind of clothing website, and you sign up with Thread, you put in some of your preferences, and then they use machine learning to be able to recommend other products that are going to be suitable for you and products that people like you have bought in the past. And that approach to personalization from day one has really paid dividends for them and for other businesses. And it's actually much, much easier, I think, for newer businesses, digitally native businesses, to implement personalization. They have the opportunity to set up their technology and data to deal with that from day one. Legacy companies or older companies have a real tough task because they've been set up to deal with things one way and kind of the same message and the same service for everyone. Being able to kind of turn that approach around and be much, much more agile is actually pretty tricky. So if there's so many compelling reasons for doing personalization, then why isn't everybody doing it? It sounds as though it should be a no-brainer, really. So why is it not happening within every business? And the answer to that is it's really difficult. It's really, really challenging, and that's why more people don't get personalization right. And there's loads of things that you have to think about to be able to implement personalization successfully. So things like getting the right content if you're a media company like Netflix, or the right merchandising or product offer if you're a product-based company. So to personalize, that really means that you've got to treat people in different ways, and to treat people in different ways, that that involves having different things to say to them, different products to offer them, different content to offer them. So there's a big challenge in producing that content or having a range of products that you can then personalize. Your marketing and customer experience has got to be really, really strong as well. So talking to people in different ways requires really strong kind of creative content, technology to be able to communicate with people in those individual ways. You've got to have the data and the technology in place to implement personalization. So collecting tons and tons of data is a pretty tricky thing to do if you're not experienced in that area. And you've also got to have the technology infrastructure to be able to manage, process, and prepare that data to then carry out the final piece, data science. So to be able to do really clever data science, to be able to understand consumer behavior, and then recommend products and services and content that is going to be relevant to each individual. And that's the area that we as Hyper actually focus on, the data science, the clever bit that enables us to understand customers and then deliver out kind of recommended products and services to each individual. So it's tough to get personalization right. And it's inherently risky as well. So more and more risks are kind of coming to the fore now. So things like data legislation, things like GDPR, and the need to be able to manage data in a trustworthy and compliant way. GDPR in the EU, in America, they've started bringing in legislation, and you would imagine that's only going to get more and more stringent. There's ethical considerations. So people who have access to data, have a lot of power, but a lot of responsibility goes with that. So many people will have seen The Great Hack on Netflix, the documentary film about Cambridge Analytica and how they were able to influence the results of various elections. So there's a trust aspect. So people who have data need to be able to use it in a trustworthy way and make sure that if they are trying to influence behaviour, it's for a kind of fair and moral reason. And then the final bit, if I was a buyer of this stuff rather than a supplier, I'd think there's tons of choices, not a lot of time to make my decision, and that would feel quite overwhelming actually. So I think with personalization, like with a lot of popular topics, so things like big data, data science, AI, machine learning, it becomes popular, and then lots of people kind of jump on the bandwagon. So a lot of people will tell you that they're able to help you with personalization challenges. So where to turn, which products to buy, which agencies to use to be able to help you with these challenges can be quite bewildering. So in addition to it being technically difficult, there's a lot of other kind of risks that need to be considered. And companies that are doing personalization well, there are businesses out there, but it tends to be in one channel. So people might do clever analytics to drive, personalized CRM activity, emails, direct mail, mobile, whatever it might be. But that's often separate from personalization in a social channel or search or on a website. And I think the trick is to be able to unify those personalization decisions so that you recognize customers no matter where they choose to interact with your brand, and then deliver out, a personalized experience no matter where the customer chooses to interact with you. So lots and lots of challenges around doing personalization really, really well. But a business that certainly is doing it really well is Netflix, who are the feature in the title of this presentation. And Netflix, I've only been a Netflix customer for a couple of years, really, but I've really enjoyed my time since I've started using Netflix. Um, I'm a big music fan, and I've ended up seeing some fantastic documentaries. Kind of biographical documentaries about famous musicians, things about the kind of evolution of different musical genres like hip hop, for example, right the way through to programs like the Defiant One, which is a kind of a documentary series about Dr. Dre and Jimmy Iovine, about their careers and about the creation of Beats, the company that they founded and then sold to Apple. And these are programs that I simply wouldn't have found if Netflix's ability to understand customers and then personalize their experience wasn't in place. So I think this is a great example to look at. So I've got a quick video here that I'm going to show. I think it's about 2.5 minutes long, and that begins to talk about how Netflix use data and use algorithms to understand customers and deliver out personalized recommendations. So I'm going to play this for you, and then I will continue after the video.
array of algorithms to make sure that their recommendations are. Netflix offers thousands of TV shows and movies available for streaming. And to help its users weed through an ever-changing catalog, it recommends titles for each viewer, including through those famous, super granular categories like romantic revenge dramas based on classic literature. How does Netflix come up with those genres and create personalized recommendations for millions of users? This is Algorithmics, the space where we explore how invisible, computer-controlled, database sets of rules are making decisions for us every day. As the company puts it, the Netflix experience is driven by a number of machine learning algorithms: personalized ranking, search, similarity, ratings, and more. Because Netflix Quandary is the same as any other online store. It can't offer up its entire catalog at once, so it must curate. But it's different because quality and taste are rarely the same thing. That means Netflix has to go beyond merely recommending top-rated titles and employ an array of algorithms to make sure that their recommendations are tailored to individual customers. What powers these algorithms? It's a mix of data and good old-fashioned human input. First, Netflix takes a look at which titles you watched, searched for, and rated good or bad. And the system shows you similar content. So, if you've watched a bunch of Parks and Rec, Netflix will recommend the likes of The Office or 30 Rock. Netflix also assumes that if your viewing patterns are similar to another user, you both have similar taste. And Netflix will serve up titles to you based on the behavior of those other users. Far more fascinating are the hyper-specific micro-genres, or alt-genres, that Netflix has created, using real live humans who categorize every bit of their content. Netflix has reportedly created some 75,000 categories that weigh tens of thousands of different factors, like romance, gore, time period, even narrative considerations like the morality of the main characters. That's why you might get a bunch of recommendations on your home screen for gory foreign satanic stories, or visually striking nostalgic dramas, or understated romantic road trip movies. It's an odd but interesting way to discover what you really like. And it's a way for Netflix to show you titles it thinks fit your absolutely specific, totally individual interests. So the next time you're so obsessed with a show that you haven't been outside all weekend, remember, you're really binging on the algorithm. Netflix offers.
Okay, sorry about that, guys. I think they had some gremlins with the audio, and then I think it was playing in PowerPoint rather than presentation mode. So sorry about that. Hope it didn't detract too much. So just to kind of summarize then some of the things that you heard in on that video clip. So Netflix have tons and tons of content. So they have to curate. Just 2 seconds. I'm just going to change the view. I think I've got the wrong view on here. Bear with me 2 seconds. Right. Okay. Sorry about that. Off we go again. Okay. So they loads and loads of content to curate, so they need to be able to need to be able to work out what's going to be most relevant to which individual. So they use a number of different factors to be able to identify that. So they look at things like how you've rated content, what you've searched for, similarity between different types of content, and rankings and that type of thing. And they and they actually they use a set of techniques that I'm going to come on to talk about in a couple of minutes, to really personalize every element of the experience that they deliver to their each individual viewer. So it'd be the genre, the genres that they present to you on your home screen, the order in which titles are displayed, right the way through to different types of artwork. So, for example, Stranger Things. With Stranger Things, lots and lots of different types of artwork that they'll display to people dependent on your specific customer profile. Then, a recommendation might be Pulp Fiction, for instance. So in Pulp Fiction, if Netflix see that you've watched a number of Uma Thurman films, then the artwork for Pulp Fiction might be, the title artwork might be Uma Thurman. Alternatively, if you've watched a number of John Travolta films, like Grease, for instance, then he might feature as the kind of title artwork. And then if you had a recommendation that was Good Will Hunting, now, if you've watched a number of kind of romantic films or romantic comedies, then they might focus on the relationship between Matt Damon and Minnie Driver as the cover artwork. Alternatively, if you've watched a number of comedies, then it might be the Robin Williams character that they focus on. So they really try to customize that experience right down to the nth degree. So I want to touch on some of the techniques, the data science techniques that underpin Netflix style personalization, and similar techniques are used by other people as well. And it has to be said that Netflix won't publish exactly how they build their personalization algorithms. They would view that as their own IP, but the broad techniques that they tend to use. So they use something akin to affinity analytics. And affinity analytics is really described as a similarity of characteristics suggesting a relationship. And that looks at the relationship between customers and other customers, or viewers and other viewers, viewers and the content they consume or the products that they buy, and content and other content, or products and other products. So how that manifests itself in reality is if I watched the Godfather, Casino, and Goodfellas, for instance, and then my mate John watches those same three films, but he also watches The Irishman, then I'm likely to get The Irishman recommended to me because we've seen that I've got similar tastes, similar an affinity and taste to my mate John, and Netflix might recommend The Irishman to me as a result. Attributes are the second piece. So attributes would be a quality or feature regarded as a characteristic or inherent part of someone or something. And an attribute gives us a rich language to be able to describe those relationships created in affinity analytics and help us kind of understand those relationships. So attributes could relate to me as a customer. So it might be that I like gangster films, Italian-American films, dramas. So they would be attributes to describe me, and also attributes to describe the content. So, it could be Robert De Niro, Al Pacino, violent film, gangster film, that kind of thing. And by understanding those characteristics of customers, of viewers and content or products that they consume, it enables brands like Netflix to be able to really personalize those recommendations to a very granular degree. And the third element is what we call customer need states. So a customer need state described here as a group of customers who are seeking similar product benefits and attributes for a particular usage occasion. This really looks at how customers go about making decisions. So in Netflix example, it might be looking for a movie on a Saturday night, or if it's on a profile of one of my kids, it could be animations over breakfast. So understanding how customers go about making those decisions about what to view, or if you're another type of company, a retailer, for example, products to buy, understanding relationships between products and the content they consume or the products that they buy, and attributes to be able to describe those relationships. Being able to do that at scale is a difficult task, but it's one that the likes of Netflix are able to crack, and that's what really underpins their ability to understand their customers, their viewing habits, and then really to be able to kind of personalize those experiences. I just want to touch on a second example now. So another brand that I really admire is Spotify, and I've ended up listening to loads of stuff on Spotify during the kind of lockdown periods all day long, really. And Spotify, again, do a great job of understanding their customers, their people who listen to music and, these days podcasts on their platform, and then being able to recommend music or other content that's going to be really relevant to them. Because if you're listening to stuff all day long, you don't really want to be listening to the same thing over and over again. It's all about kind of discovery and finding new things. So I'm just going to play this clip. This is about just going on for 3 minutes, and this will talk you through how Spotify use data and use data science and algorithms to curate their Discover Weekly playlists, and I think they also use similar techniques for their daily playlists that are recommended to you as Spotify customers. So I'm going to play this and then pick up again after the video.
The song you're hearing is Don't You Know by Jan Hammer, a musician sometimes only remembered for making the Miami Vice soundtrack. Believe it or not, unearthing this song helped convince Spotify that their playlist by algorithm, Discover Weekly, was onto something big. But how can a machine know that you dig obscure 1970s synth funk? We'll explain. Finding new music isn't always easy, something Spotify's Discover Weekly playlist tries to rectify. We asked Matt Ogle, music discovery lead and the late-blooming Jan Hammer convert, to explain its appeal.
Its success has been driven by the fact that it sort of took all that work out of discovery. It just said, hey, it's Monday morning, here's a playlist.
And you can almost see how eerily good the algorithm is at getting people. Every Sunday night, there's a spike as users rush to save the music they found and now love before it's replaced on Monday. And that accuracy is due to what Spotify calls the cyborg approach.
I think it's a fool's errand to try to build some big computer brain that eventually will understand music better than a human. It's our users or our editors who spot something first, and then it's the algorithm's job to amplify that.
On one hand, there are the choices of the curating community. 100 million people making 2.5 billion playlists.
Every single song on your Discover Weekly every week is there because at least one other person on Spotify essentially vouched for it by putting it on a playlist of their own.
On the other side, there's the individual and all your musical choices. The algorithm searches for similarities between the streams. If you and a playlist maker both like 2 songs, then Discover Weekly serves up a 3rd song that you haven't heard before. It's called collaborative filtering, but because it relies on choices at scale, it can emphasize the now popular. Bad news for anyone who might one day love Jan Hammer B-sides. So there's another layer. Spotify tools group your listening history into these super specific mini-genres. Your taste profile looks kind of like a volcanic island. It shifts, but around its peaks are your current musical favorites. The playlist match songs Discover Weekly locates for you are confined to the foothills of what you already listen to. And at the same time, the algorithm spots and then filters out what you might play a lot, but not necessarily want to play a lot.
So a lot of people had this sort of strange island of taste way over here, and it had completely uncharacteristic stuff in it. And we kept going, what are these islands? And when we looked, it was almost always Disney or things like that.
Everything, though, starts with playlists, and that makes the output malleable. Dormant songs from the 50s and 60s have suddenly appeared on Mondays as newer artists sample them and users curate them. So even though it may not exactly feel like your old mixtape, Discover Weekly is giving you something that originated with human musical choices, just amplified. Kind of like Jan Hammer's keyboard.
Okay, so another good video there showing how Spotify use data science to really deliver a personal and pleasurable music experience. So just to kind of summarize some of the things that those guys are doing. So they collect tons and tons of data. So 100 million people, 100 million customers, listeners, creating 2.5 billion playlists. So that's a lot of data that they're bringing in, they're organizing, and they're using as the basis for generating insight driven by data science. Then they carry out collaborative filtering is the technique that they use, and affinity analytics that I talked about in the previous slide really kind of powers collaborative filtering. So it looks at the affinity between the kind of songs that you're listening to and songs that people like you might listen to, and by carrying out that kind of affinity analytics, they can look at those relationships and be able to recommend songs that are going to be most closely matched to your taste, but allow you to discover new songs. Attributes I talked about in the Netflix example. So Spotify use attributes here to really understand the nature of the music that you listen to. So it might be really specific genres like, 90s, I don't know, 90s hip hop or, synth rock from the 80s, whatever that might be, and that allows them to paint a rich picture of the relationships of the customers and the content that they're listening to. And then they use all that to create a personalized experience and deliver that through your Discover Weekly recommendations, and all through the kind of daily playlist that they present to you. And also, like with Netflix, really, there's a human element to that. So I forgot to mention this with Netflix, but Netflix, humans are actually creating those subgenres, those subcategories, to create those attributes. It's the same here with Spotify. So everything's kind of starts with a human. So a human adds something to a playlist, and then they use machine learning and they use a kind of compute power to be able to really amplify that, and to be able to deliver those recommendations to individuals to help them discover new music. So that's thinking about personalization as most people know it. So recommendation systems, really. So with that, most people recognize that with Amazon. So you shop on Amazon. People like you who bought this also bought this product, and they've done pretty well out of that approach. What most people don't realize is that personalization extends way beyond that. So the recommendation engine is really just the tip of the iceberg. It's the really kind of easily apparent piece associated with personalization. But actually, if you carry out those analytical techniques that I've described, so affinity analytics, creating attributes, understanding customer need states, that actually produces a gold mine of information that you can use to optimize other areas of a business. So that might be optimizing your product range, your product assortment. So if you can understand the products that people buy together, if you can understand what products are substitutable, what products people have the greatest loyalty to, then you can curate a product range that's going to be most effective. And that's really important at the moment. With COVID happening, what you're finding is a lot of particularly retail business are looking to rationalize their product range. They're looking to really cut back and have more of a core product range, not too many products, because it's actually can be quite expensive to stock tons of products if people are not buying them. So being able to make those decisions with greater certainty is very important. Supply chain and demand forecasting. So again, if you understand the relationships between products, what's substitutable, then you can make sure that you can forecast more effectively. Supermarkets, so supermarkets are probably going to suffer from panic buying again pretty soon, as if these lockdown measures continue and get more stringent. Panic buying is likely to come back into supermarkets, and all the supermarkets had a real problem with products flying off the shelves and people not being able to get what they needed. So if they can forecast demand more effectively, that's going to be a really good thing. And this type of analytics that I've talked about would help them to do that. Kind of a customer-led approach to understanding product purchases, what products are bought together, will help them. What are substitutable? So if they run out of one product, being able to put an alternative that is a good alternative in the mind of the customer on the shelves. Price optimization, so you'll be able to price within a customer need state. So if you offer 5 black dresses, for example, and you understand that that's a customer need state is to shop for a black dress for a Saturday night, you can price within that need state. So you can optimize the pricing and maximize the margin that you're able to achieve for the products that you sell. You can look at real-time kind of business insights and alerts based on some of the metrics that come out of personalization analytics. You're able to curate a website. So we've talked a couple of times about companies with tons and tons of content or tons of products. Curating that for each individual is made much easier if you're able to kind of understand what products customers, the individual customer and other customers like them who have displayed similar behavior, what they're most interested in. Then you can present a range of products that can be most relevant to them and give you the best chance of converting the customer. And then for marketing and CRM, so understanding the products that customers have an affinity to, and then having attributes to describe them, can really feed into marketing and CRM activity, so that you can present marketing activity and messages that is really going to resonate with each customer much better than that kind of broad approach that you might otherwise have. Okay, bear with me one second. Okay, so another company doing this really, really well is Nike. So Nike, obviously a very long-standing brand, sold predominantly to through retailers, but more and more now they're moving to a model of selling directly to consumers, and they've used insights created through those kind of personalization analytics to be able to present a much more compelling store offer. And I just want to play you this quick video, and then I'll talk through what they're doing afterwards.
Nike by Melrose just opened today, and it's all about LA.
We really built this store for our local members.
Users of the Nike Plus app and Nike.com customers.
Everything from the products to services is informed by the 5 zip codes that are adjacent to the store.
Nike Senior Product Director Sean Madden says, for example, these women's tights are in high demand in the area.
So we've committed to having them here all year long.
Instead of only during certain seasons. For the guys, you can expect to see this hoodie year-round. Another very LA product, this.
We started studying buying patterns. 1 out of every 50 pair of Nikes sold in LA is a Cortez.
The store also offers a customized shopping experience. If you know what you want, you can reserve it, and it'll be placed in one of these lockers or pick it up at the shoe bar. There's also curbside service, complete with a parking space.
You can also text the store.
You text 424-277 Nike, and you can get what you want when you want it.
There you go, John.
It's not quite that fast, but it's pretty darn close.
If you text us in the morning, same day.
If you need help picking out something, you can book an appointment with an associate known as athletes and even reserve a fitting room.
I like both because sometimes you just want to get in and get out. You don't want to be hassled by many different sales associates.
Nike Plus members like Francisco and Naya also get freebies here in this vending machine. You scan your membership, pick out what you want, and it's yours.
Every 2 weeks you get a different item, so it's cool, just a way to just bring people into the store.
So you'll be here how often now?
Probably every 2 weeks.
This customer says he hopes in 2 weeks the freebie will be
Pair of shoes.
in West Hollywood. Joe Kwan, CBS 2 News.
Okay, so I mean it's a truly awful video clip, but I think it it makes some great points. So Nike, what they're doing is they're curating a local shop in Melrose, which is in LA, based on the data collected from people who live near that store. So using Nike Plus, Nike.com to understand buying behavior of people in I think it said the 5 zip codes closest to the store. And they're using that to understand buying behavior, to stock products that are most relevant to people who are likely to shop in that store, and then to be able to offer personalized experiences to customers. So could be, place an order and then pick up in store. You're going to see more retailers adopting that kind of multi-channel approach. Or it could be free gifts to encourage people to keep coming back. So for a small free gift, they've probably worked out that people come back to store and then they buy other things. So the basket value increases. So I think that's a really interesting example of a brand who are using analytics and understanding individuals to be able to personalize an in-store experience. And then another experience, example that I wanted to share was Airbnb. So Airbnb use the type of techniques that I've talked about a little bit here. So affinity analytics, attributes, customer need states, and they use those techniques so that when you search for a property, you get a list of recommended properties where they've used those kind of analytics to suggest the most relevant list of properties that they think you're going to be interested in. But they actually take it a step further. They use the insights that they create through that process to be able to optimize other key decisions. So pricing is one of those. So Airbnb identified. So the challenge that they wanted to address was making sure that they can fill properties, particularly out of season, and that they can generate the greatest profit possible for Airbnb and the partner, the customer who's selling the property, the room, for one night or a period of time. So what they do is they use the outputs, the insights from those personalization analytics to be able to understand kind of consideration sets. So what properties do people consider together, and also create attributes to understand those properties. So an attribute could be near the beach or near local amenities or, family-sized property, those kinds of things. And by understanding those kind of consideration sets, they were able to identify other groups of similar properties that they could look at to really inform their their pricing algorithm, so that they could price more effectively than, if they weren't using that type of approach, really more traditional type of pricing approaches, which might be more kind of gut feel led than data led. And that's really paid dividends for them. They talk about this approach on their engineering blog, which is available on Medium, how they've used that kind of clever personalization analytics to inform pricing and really increase both yield and profit margin for Airbnb and for the people who own properties. Okay, so as a final section then, I'm just going to talk about steps to implement personalization in your own business. And we think there's kind of 8 key steps to follow. So this starts off with defining the business objectives that personalization are going to support. So you wouldn't just do it for the sake of it. It's got to serve a particular purpose and align with broader business objectives. So they might be around customer retention, customer acquisition, customer growth, improving brand perception, whatever that may be. But you've got to start from that point. And that's really a way to get more senior buy-in if you can align a personalization initiative with kind of broader strategic objectives. Secondly is undertake a gap analysis to inform planning. So where are you now and where do you need to get to? What are the key areas where you've got some weaknesses that you're going to need to address to be able to get a personalization initiative similar to those that the likes of Netflix and Spotify implement to get those through? Thirdly is creating a personalization plan to meet objectives. So what you're going to do to address some of those gaps. And one of the big areas to focus on is the cultural thing. So you have to have the right kind of culture, a kind of a customer-led culture and a real desire to be able to personalize an experience to an individual customer with a view that that's going to improve customer experience, leading to greater customer loyalty and higher profits for your business. So creating that plan about how you're going to fill those gaps and focusing on culture is one of those aspects. Then you focus on the analytics piece, analytics and research to understand how customers go about buying your product or service or content, customer journeys. So the kind of data science part I've talked about a fair bit in this presentation, and that's the type of thing we do at Hyper, but then also looking at the research side of things as well to kind of map out customer journeys. So you've got the qual and the quant kind of angles on understanding customers and the journeys that they make. From that analytics and that customer journey mapping, you'll create insights which will inform personalization and will help you then do number 6, which creates content, campaigns and experience assets. So you've got to have loads of really high quality content to be able to personalize the experience to each individual that then compels them to take the action you want them to undertake. Next is orchestrating personalization activities, so via some kind of CRM tool or web content management platform, or if it's in store, it might be via a clienteling app. Big gap really is for brands to be able to personalize an experience in person, so in a store or a branch, if it's a bank or however you talk to your customers, but having the tools in place to be able to generate customer insight and recommendations, but put those then in the hands of the person or the system that's having that interaction with the customer, so orchestrating that activity. And then the final part, number 8, is testing, measuring, learning, iterating and optimizing. So you've got to treat this as an iterative process really. So test, see what works by measuring it. You learn from that, you iterate and you optimize, but do that on an ongoing basis. It's not just a one hit and then off we go. Things change. You have major changes like COVID-19 and some of the other things that are happening in the world at the moment that really impact consumer behavior, and then much smaller or more micro changes. So could be competition changes the landscape. So you've got to be willing to kind of adapt really, really quickly. Okay, and then thinking about some of the required capabilities. So I've borrowed this slide from Boston Consulting Group, or a large management consultancy. And I'm thinking here specifically about the kind of technology stack that you might want to think about. So the first bit is data management and analytics. So if you're a large-scale business with lots of data, you've got to invest the time and the money in putting together a technology stack that's going to enable you to ingest data from multiple touch points, create a single view of a customer so you can truly understand your relationship with them, and be able to have that data secure, compliant, and then made available to carry out the analytics. On top of that, you'd layer an analytics engine. So this is where Hyper tend to come in, an analytics engine or a data science engine to be able to carry out the type of data science techniques that I've described in this presentation. So affinity analytics, creation of attributes, understanding customer need states, so on and so forth. So the analytics engine would sit on top of that data management platform. You then have a personalization layer and customer experience delivery. So these are technologies that you'd use to actually communicate with customers in relevant ways. So a CRM platform, or a content management platform, or a clienteling device in a store or a branch, or whatever it might be. But these are the tools to enable you to actually serve relevant experiences which have been recommended by the analytics engine that I described previously. And then you'd want the metrics and measurement in place. So as per the previous slide, tools in place to be able to understand what worked, what didn't work so well, to be able to measure it and close the loop, really, so that you then take those learnings back into the process and learn and kind of optimize on an ongoing basis. And apologies for the busy slide, but then thinking about some of the practical things that you might do to get started with personalization. Now, I think it's a challenging topic. There's a lot to think about, as you will have seen as we've gone through this. And it may be that you have the people in place, the technology in place to be able to do this stuff yourself. And if so, I think that's great. You've got control over it. Well, that tends to be the domain of very large, kind of cash-rich companies. Most companies need help. Whether that's with the strategy in the first place about how do I tackle this initiative, or it may be for more specific parts such as data science or technology or content delivery, whatever it might be. So I would always advocate trying to seek out an agency or multiple agencies that can really help you through this process. And I think that's in doing that, you're likely to have greater success. Some of the resources out there that you might look at. So we talk about a lot of this stuff on our website and social channels about some of the kind of thought leadership around personalization. Also check out Medium. So on Medium, Airbnb's engineering blog, you'll find the piece I talked about with how they use personalization analytics to drive pricing decisions. Netflix have a tech blog. They talk about what they do in terms of using data science and technology to drive personalization. Really, really interesting. Lots of other companies out there, and I think they're motivation is that they can appeal more to employees if they kind of publicize very competitive field, data engineering and data science. So they publish a lot of their stuff out there. There's lots of consultancies and agencies and technology companies who publish interesting stuff around personalization and will help you understand, how you might go about implementing personalization in your own business. So people like Accenture and Forrester and Gartner, the analyst companies, publish a lot of good stuff. Some big agencies out there, such as Wunderman and Publicis Sapient, they have some good thought leadership content. And then technology companies. So Dynamic Yield, who are owned by McDonald's, Reach Relevance, and Nosto. McDonald's actually bought Dynamic Yield for their personalization capability to be able to personalize. The first use case was drive-through menus, so they could personalize those based on the either the person in that particular car, or more generally based on what was happening, the weather and what stock they've got and all that kind of stuff. So those companies have some really interesting content around personalization. Tends to be based on web content, web content personalization, but it's certainly worth checking out. And then more on the science side, if you want to have a go at this stuff yourself, there's a lot of content out there and a lot of learning opportunities via the likes of Coursera, Udemy, Udacity, or competitions on the likes of Kaggle. So the barrier to entry to at least get a taste of this stuff is lower than it once was. So you can do courses for a very affordable amount of money on how to build recommender systems, recommendation engines. It tends to be when you get a bit deeper into it, you might want some specialist support, but it's certainly worth having a look at that just to get a feel and familiarity with the broad area. Okay, so that's all the content that I wanted to present today. And I think in summary, what I'd say is, personalization can really pay dividends. If you look at the likes of Netflix, it's really underpins their business success in helping customers to discover content, to discover products, and to keep them sticky, to keep them coming back time and time again. But it's also really difficult. There's a lot of challenges to doing it well. So I'd encourage you to kind of understand the area yourself, but if you need to seek external support. I'd be happy to take any questions if anyone wants to pop any in the chat. Otherwise, please feel free to get in touch with me outside of this presentation via the details on the screen. And thanks very much for spending some time with me today. Thank you. So if anyone does have any questions, feel free to post them in the chat and I'll do my best to respond. So what's the minimum amount of data you need before personalization can really be achieved? So I don't think there is a minimum amount. I think it's actually much easier if you're a small business and you've got relatively few clients or customers. It's actually dead easy. If you think back to people, shop owners, for example, back in the day, they recognized their regular customers and they could remember what they've bought before, and they could then personalize their interactions and the products that they recommend based on that. So it's actually really easy at a small scale. And the more you scale up, the more data that you create, then the more difficult it gets, and the more you need to implement those more sophisticated techniques that I've talked about in this presentation. So I don't think there is a minimum, to be honest. I think you can do it at any scale. And I think the businesses out there, like, ours is definitely one of them, that are trying to make personalization much more accessible to any company, really. So, a lot of people will think they just can't replicate what the likes of Netflix are doing, but, our mission really is to change that and to help make it more accessible to people. So hopefully that answers your question there, Claire. Okay, any other questions? I'll just, keep the session open for a couple more minutes, just in case. Okay, so I've had another question, not to the group actually, but I don't think it's I don't think it's a confidential one. So, are there any technical case study material out there on the implementation of Netflix style personalization? So there's a Netflix tech blog. I think that's the one to pick up on. So if you just, I think I had it on a previous slide actually. Let me see if we can go back to that. Yeah, so netflixtechblog.com. If you look on there, they have tons of good stuff on there, and they talk about how they implement personalization techniques. I can't remember which particular thread it was on, but you can find it on there. They also have a podcast, which you can get on wherever you get your podcasts from, so Spotify or Apple or wherever it might be. They have a podcast where people from their technology team come on and talk about different initiatives, and they're very passionate about what they do. Very talented bunch of engineers and data scientists. So it's worth seeking that out as well and looking through the catalogue of the back catalogue of episodes, and you probably find some useful stuff on there too. So hopefully that helps. Okay, no problem. Any further questions? Okay, I'm going to wrap it up there then, guys. So thanks ever so much for your time, anyone who's left on the call. And as I say, if you want to get in touch outside of this session, please feel free to contact me via email, peter@hyper-group.co.uk, or on LinkedIn. They're probably the main channels, or Twitter @hyperstrategy. And thanks very much for your time today.